Welcome everybody to the Montana Historical Society public program tonight on the Holter Research Laboratory. I'm Christine Brown. I am I'm a historian at the Montana Historical Society in the Outreach and Interpretation Department. And tonight we're going to hear about the Holter Heart Monitor, Jeff Holter and Bill Glasscock and their legacy. It's really fascinating. I can't wait to hear the talk by Liz Gundersen, who I think most of you might know, but I'm still going to introduce her anyway. Liz came to Montana in 1978 and worked at a hospital on the Crow Indian Hospital. And then she moved to Helena, and with Jeff Strickler, she opened the Helena Pediatric Clinic in 1985. And for the next 25 years, she cared for Helena's kids, babies and kids, and retired in 2000.
Early.
And then in 2003, she helped start our ExplorationWorks Museum, which we all know and love and are so happy to have. And that opened in 2007. And since then, she's been a general cheerleader for XWorks, helping with the big NASA grant organizing events for girls in science, delivering regular programs in stream ecology and robotics. And she is still serving as the board secretary?
Yeah, they said I could die there. It's hard to get a secretary.
Yeah. One of her favorite side projects has been working on the development of the Holter Research Laboratory exhibit at ExplorationWorks. During her journey to create the exhibit, she got to know Jean Glasscock and Joan Holter, and she also got to know the MTHS library staff very well, spending about 100 hours in our library doing research. So a warm welcome to Dr. Liz Gundersen.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, we'll see how the technology works here. Can everybody hear? Yeah. Okay. It worked. In 1948, Norman Jeff Holter and Wilfred Bill Glasscock formed what has been called one of the most successful partnerships ever to exist in the field of biomedical engineering. Working first in a space in the Holter hardware store, it moved to the empty and unused Great Northern Depot Station, where the Federal Reserve Bank sits today. And you can see Carroll College over there on the left. And on the right, you can just barely see the words Holter Hardware Company lettered on the top of that building. And if you drive down Front Street, you can still see it. They painted it over. You can see still it's condos on the top and the whiskey distillery in the bottom. But that was where they stored stuff. That's not where they, the hardware per se. Jeff Holter was born in a historic pioneering Helena family. With a background in chemistry and physics, he served as a civilian scientist in the Navy and studied the effects of the atomic bomb tests in Bikini Atoll and the Pacific after the war. Returning to Helena to run the family businesses, his love of scientific investigation led to his founding of the Holter Research Laboratory, where he gathered equipment for experiments, microscopes, chemicals, scales, electronics equipment, radiation detectors, and fabrication materials. And this lab was really only one of his many interests. I loved the cigar. You know, times have changed. Bill Glasscock was born on a ranch outside Glendive, Montana, where he grew up fixing machinery and tinkering with machines and electronics. During World War II, he worked on B-17 bombers that went on to MSU to study physics. Holter found him there and offered him a job on the spot doing pure research in the new lab, which Bill happily accepted, and in 1948, their collaboration was launched. Serendipity was the guiding principle of the lab. While investigating one subject, they would be led in unexpected directions. One day, they wondered whether they could locate uranium deposits by studying atmospheric radioactivity downwind from a uranium deposit and following it to its source. One site they went to was the top of McDonald Pass, where they collected snow samples and were quite surprised to discover very high levels of radioactivity. But it was not related to uranium decay. Holter knew it fit the decay curve for the many kinds of fission products from an atomic bomb explosion. And they were the first civilian scientists to discover Russia's secret nuclear testing in Kazakhstan in 1949, months before the official public announcement. They reported their findings to the Navy, but did not get credit. Also, it was not a good way to find uranium. As part of their mission to promote science education and careers in Helena, they invited area teenagers into the lab. Here they are watching a big Tesla coil being discharged, and among those teens are two who I'm sure we all know. Rich Boswell is in the front row in the white shirt, and he's right back there right now. And he was often involved in their experiments with the monitors, running up and down Mount Helena with a heavy pack on his back, and he's still that fit. And Rich also told me about the time Holter came back from California and laid out big black and white photo prints done by Ansel Adams. And I can't help but think that Matt might have inspired him in his own photographic career, where he's now photographing Montana ghost towns for the Historical Society. And in the back road there is Tim Malloy. He became a Helena lawyer, and I'm sure some of you will recognize some of the other names. Toady is Laura Toady, I know, worked for the Independent Record. As some others. Holter had done previous research studying electrical activity in biological systems, mostly frogs, and he was interested in how to transmit those electrical impulses to recording devices, especially in humans. The men started by studying transmission of electrical patterns in the brain to an oscilloscope using radio telemetry. And here Bill is, on a stationary bike, wearing a battery pack in the front, electrodes on a headband, and with wires connecting to a transmitter on his back, and there's an antenna transmitting his brain waves to a receiver hooked up to the oscilloscope over there on the right. So it was quite a deal. And this is a photo of Holter doing the same with a better view of the setup. You can see the battery pack hanging in front, and on his back an 85-pound ammunition box loaded with vacuum tubes, an electroencephalograph machine, and radio broadcast equipment. They even took this contraption outside to study brainwave comparisons when riding a bike around the block with eyes open, and then riding with eyes shut. And I don't have a better description of it than that. I somehow wondered. This picture is often used in articles as an example of an early Holter Heart Monitor, but it's not. Notice there are no wires on the chest where his heart is. They are on his head where his brain is. They were having great fun with these experiments, but ultimately had no practical application for the brain work. I had lunch with their widows, Joan Holter and Jean Glasscock, and they told me how the boys had come to a dead end. There was nothing else new they could think to do. They might have to close down the lab. And then something wonderful happened. Dr. Paul Dudley White came to visit. White was a founder of the American Heart Association and President Eisenhower's personal physician. In 1951, at a Heart Association meeting in Great Falls, he heard about Holter's work on transmitting brain electrical patterns, and he traveled to the lab in Helena for a day to take a look. Impressed, he asked if they could also take similar readings of the heart electrical activity. That's what cardiologists really needed, was a recording of the heart over several hours. A device that could do that would benefit all mankind. They realized that of course they could do that. The heart's electrical transmissions were 10 times stronger than the brain's. It should be much easier. White's visit was a spark that ignited a period of intense experimentation, work that would keep them busy for the next 17 years. Holter later said that White's comment was a great shot in the arm for me because I was a young lad and impressionable. Although I had been about to give it all up, I decided to go ahead with the work just so Dr. White could hear about it. They immediately started work on ways to record heart activity. What a couple of guys. Abandoning telemetry for reel-to-reel tape. Here are Holter and Glasscock with miniaturized wearable devices developed after several years of work. 3 breakthroughs over those years have been critical to the development to this point. First, recent work on miniaturization of the electronics involved. In the 1950s, transistors replaced vacuum tubes. They were getting smaller and better, along with other electric components. Secondly, they had to develop a rapid playback system for a recording tape, so 10 hours could be reviewed in only 10 minutes by a physician, because physician was going to sit there for 10 hours. And critically, they decided to add sound tones to the playback to alert a reviewer to abnormal electrical activity, as it was much easier to hear a rhythm abnormality in a mass of data than to find it visually. So, the Society archives have 51 linear feet of the Holter Lab materials. And I waded in. And this is one page from a weight book in 1956. Their work on the monitor was divided up. Holter, with his background in chemistry, physics, and physiology, had the creative insight to pursue an invention that overlapped these fields. He also maintained extensive contacts with cardiologists who helped with the direction of the research and the testing. This type priority list from 1956 is indicative of his style. He had a very clear idea of what he needed and created comprehensive tasks for Glasscock: design and construction, miniaturization, attention to signal quality, portability, secure connections for the leads, affordability, and constant debugging. If held up on one item, he said, go to the next. This way, each day will show progress on some part of the list. And indeed, Bill was very busy while Holter traveled and attended the lab as one of his many projects. And here's Glasscock's lab book. His entries show the meat of the development. Loaded with specifications and drawings, this was the daily work that showed the successes, failures, and breakthroughs in design that advanced the project and documented the work that led to a patent. Carl Richards, who was the son of my former clinic partner, Bill Richards, learned electronics in the lab as a teen and spent hours with Bill helping wind copper wire for the electronics. His comment to me was, Holter dropped in once in a while, meanwhile Bill was doing all the work. April of 1962 saw a workable device, patented by both Holter and Glasscock. Here's Holter holding the prototype device, and on the right is a copy of the patent, filed July 1962, with Jeff and Bill's names at the lower right. They assigned the patent registration to Bruce Del Mar of Del Mar Avionics in California for development and production. Del Mar was an inventor himself who headed an engineering laboratory with assets capable of improving, manufacturing, and distributing the monitor, and he had connections with university cardiologists in California for the testing. Bill was sent out to California to explain and consult on the projects and ongoing research. The Holter monitor soon became a multi-million-dollar business for Del Mar, and he donated an early model to the Smithsonian. Here is Del Mar pointing to a bulky data analyzer with an EKG readout. And behind him, you can just make out the outline of a body with EKG leads attached, leading to a small recording device sitting on the table just below his arm. Can you see that? Yeah, okay. Del Mar developed many newer devices with names like electrocardiotarter and electrocardioscanner, but in a strongly worded letter in 1967, Holter insisted that the name Holter Research Foundation should be referenced in the articles, and the shortened Holter should be on a nameplate on those instruments in which you have licensed you to manufacture. And so it is to this very day. As he pointed out in that letter to Del Mar would receive all the profits, and Holter simply wished to retain credit for the idea. Del Mar agreed, and even today, cardiologists write in to wonder why the Holter name is still retained in the face of its extraordinary modernization, and that's why. As part of the marketing, a major feature of the Holter monitor was its ease of use during daily activities. Cardiac electrodes stuck to the body were threaded through clothes to the recording device and carried in a case slung over the shoulder. Then the tapes would be taken and analyzed separately. So this picture of Joan Holter, Jeff's wife, shopping with 4 children, and I have no idea if those are her 4 children, you might know, Rich, was published nationally in magazines to demonstrate its wearability. Looking closely, you can see the electrode wires threading from her purse over her shoulder to over her left chest and hidden under the collar of this very stylish dress. Anyone would be proud to be wearing a Holter monitor in public. Well, as a medical student, I had, of course, learned about the Holter monitor and was really surprised to find out it was invented in Helena. I had retired from practice and had joined folks developing the new Science Center. And I decided it'd be fun to develop a Holter monitor exhibit in time for ExplorationWorks grand opening, November 2007. The Historical Society gave me access to their extensive archives and early photographs, and even helped me obtain original prototypes for display, which is no mean process, by the way. You have to have written permission for the board, and it takes months. Plus, we were able to get a compact modern version for comparison. Here's the exhibit with close-ups of the artifacts. Left to right, that's an early amplifier for increasing the voltage signal of the EKG, attached to a transmitter, which sent the signal over to an EKG machine. Below that is a view of an improved amplifier made small enough to fit in this lady's makeup case. I'm pretty sure that was Bill's work. Next right is the newer consolidated device containing a slow-moving magnetic tape that recorded the signal packaged in a wearable leather case. And next is a commercial monitor donated to Holter by Bruce Del Mar. And above right is the modern monitor built into a memory stick, and of course the memory and analytic capacity is just huge now and increases all the time. Now, when I started research at the Historical Society, I thought the story was Jeff Holter. But over in photo archives, Rebecca Cole asked me, what about Bill Glasscock? He was the co-inventor, you know. You're not going to forget about him like everybody else, are you? Becca, where are you? Yeah, there you are. So it became a project that portrayed and honored both men. Their wives, Joan and Jean, were a great help. And Jean Glasscock was our very first ExplorationWorks visitor waiting at the door at our grand opening. But what about the legacy of Bill Glasscock? Here's the problem. A misconception has arisen over the decades that Jeff Holter was the sole inventor of the monitor. Look at Wikipedia for Holter Monitor in 2007, and this is what you saw. Holter was the inventor, linking to Norman Holter for more information. No mention of Glasscock. And that problem is extended throughout much of the medical literature of the time. And here is the entry on the Smithsonian's history blog. Highlighted in orange, they credit 2 men with inventing the Holter monitor, but whoops, the other creative and persistent man credited with the invention is Bruce Del Mar. It's true, Del Mar was very important in improving and developing the device, but his name is not on the original patent. So, why has Jeff Holter achieved so much fame as the inventor while Bill Glasscock has faded into obscurity? Partly, the Holter name is a large legacy. The Holter family, Holter Dam, Lake, Holter Museum. And Jeff Holter lived life large, active in business and the arts, even using dynamite to create metal sculptures. He was also an initial member and the driving force for organizing and founding the Society of Nuclear Medicine in 1953 that helped promote radiation therapy. After prolonged scuffles with local physicians, followed by a mandate from the powerful president of St. Peter's Board of Trustees named John Delano, Helena finally joined other large Montana cities in offering nuclear medicine therapy. Holter was both a prominent and controversial personality. Glasscock, meanwhile, was hardworking, steady, and quiet. When the lab closed in 1968, he went on staff with the Office of Public Instruction as the Science Research Consultant. There he continued to tinker with new technology, and there I have a picture that I got from, that was given to me by Jean Glasscock. Bill wrote a computer program that created art in the form of Mandelbrot sets as a kind of abstract fractal. So in 1985, he was still using science creatively. And on the back is the program written in BASIC that he used. I sort of remember that when I started. Yeah, it was fun to find that. So, we have information. We've resurrected Jeff Glasscock's role in the project. Now, how do we get the word out? Well, this helped. When Joan Holter died in 2010, I received a call from Marga Lincoln at the Independent Record asking about the 2 men's connection with the Holter monitor. She'd seen the ExplorationWorks exhibit and wanted the background. It was gratifying to see the obituary give full credit to both as co-inventors. That was good. What more? In February 2016, I was talking about this with Rebecca Cole, I believe at a symphony intermission, and she told me to sign up for an upcoming Wikipedia editing training at the Historical Society, so I did. Do you remember that? Okay. Here is the updated Holter Heart Monitor Wikipedia entry. I gathered my reference materials and sources and worked for 3 intense hours under supervision to insert 3 reference sentences into the 3rd paragraph. And I'm going to read it. The Holter Monitor was developed at the Holter Research Laboratory in Helena, Montana by experimental physicists Norman J. Holter and Bill Glasscock, references 2 and 3, who started work on radio telemetry in 1949, inspired by a suggestion from cardiologist Paul Dudley White in the early 1950s. They redirected their efforts toward development of a wearable cardiac monitoring device, reference 4, and the Holter Monitor was released by commercial production in 1962. Bam. And notice the enlarged footnote quote from a journal obituary written in 1993 by Dr. Stuart Meldrum, a cardiologist from the early development days. With the passing of Bill Glasscock, we have lost the second half of one of the most successful partnerships ever to exist in the field of biomedical engineering. Yes, that's it, in a footnoted nutshell. And now, the Holter-Glasscock situation has found its way into contemporary media. Googling Holter Monitor and Glasscock brings up this. A young woman going by Lexi Doig has copied that Wikipedia information on her page, and she also has pictures of kittens, and has added a hashtag, Justice for Glasscock label. Several of her followers took it up, adding some information about the monitor and how it had helped them. And I have some more Justice for Glasscock labels up here, buttons if you would like one. And several other Googled references in medical articles have also copied the paragraph. I can tell because I got my footnotes. However, the thing that had been missing from my research was Bill Glasscock's actual voice. He was frequently mentioned, but rarely heard from directly. And then, last month, another Google search turned up something new. It seems Bill Glasscock could be very peppery when provoked. In 1991, Dr. Corday had written a retrospective piece for the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, celebrating the 30th anniversary of ambulatory cardiac monitoring. A few months later, Glasscock's response was published, and the reproduction is blurry, but I've highlighted it in one sentence. I'll try to make my point easy to remember. For future reference, picture a huge red-lettered stamp across pages 286 to 292 of that issue stating, warning to serious students of Holter monitoring, this article may be harmful to your sense of historical perspective. Really strong words. Among other things, Bill took issue with Corday's statement about having a hand in the very early development. He stated that Corday hadn't even seen the monitor, and Bill showed it to him in 1962 on a trip to California. And we could check the Historical Society's records on this. Corday retorts in his response that he has proof of his early involvement via letters with Holter and Del Mar during early development. Glasscock is wrong, he says, and we can go check his personal correspondence in California for proof. I cannot arbitrate this disagreement. It seems to be nitpicking, but I do know from his wife, Jean, that Bill felt strongly about the importance of his work. She said he never had a single complaint about the long hours he worked on it, and his pride of ownership in the invention is evident in this letter. In his obituary, written in 1993 by Dr. Stuart Meldrum in the Journal of American Cardiologists, again, he said, with the passing of Bill Glasscock, we have lost the second half of one of the most successful partnerships ever to exist in the field of biomedical engineering. Thus, sometimes your accomplishments result in a portrait hung with other famous Montanans in the corridors of the state capitol, and sometimes your accomplishments lie buried in a footnote, but both bear historical witness to your life's work. So I want to thank the Montana Historical Society for access to the collections and the help of their wonderful staff, and to Doug Looney for help building the exhibit, and to Rebecca Cole for repeatedly pointing me in the right direction. And I'm forever grateful for the help from Jeannie Glasscock and Joan Holter, lovely ladies, who became involved in this project while we were building ExplorationWorks. And this is probably the only picture we'll ever see of Joan Holter in a hard hat on a construction site. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. That was fascinating. And I'm sure that we have some questions from folks in the audience. I do want to remind everyone that we are recording this talk for future broadcasts on YouTube. So I'm going to pass the microphone to you so you can say your question into the microphone. So when people view this at home, they can hear your question. Anyone? Questions?
And or comments.
Thanks, Liz. That was great.
Thanks, Paige.
So does Bill Glasscock now have a Wikipedia entry, and are you going to write that?
Oh, shoot. Oh, that's such a good idea. It's so much work. Okay, I'll take that as a suggestion. You have to do it with those people. Are they having other sessions on training you to? No, you don't know. But not these days. That's too bad, because I can't imagine doing it without somebody standing there and saying, nope, that's wrong, that's wrong. Yeah, we'll see, maybe.
So when the Holter Monitor was developed, you said they asked for no money for it? He didn't receive anything?
Right.
So how did they stay in business? How did they keep?
Grants. Holter had money himself, and he put some of his own money in, and as time went on, they got more grants. He didn't, in that letter, the harsh letter, what he said he wanted his name, he said, I know I didn't ask you for money, and I don't want money from you, but remember that you are making tons of money about this. He said, I don't think he really had the capability. Oh, he says I could have done it myself, but in fact, doing something like that in Helena, Montana would be virtually impossible. There's not the resources, academic or anything else. And he had a good relationship with Delmar, and Delmar treated him fairly, and that's what he wanted. He wanted someone who would treat him fairly with respect. And so eventually they were low on money. After the monitor work was finished, they had some tag-along work with it, but there was nothing else big that came along. Yeah.
Liz, I worked at the Holter Research Laboratory for 2 summers when I was 14 and 15 respectively. And the Holter Monitor was being actively designed and developed at that time. And I was kind of the guinea pig. It was the size of a backpack, literally. And among my job responsibilities was to slap that backpack on and run up and down Mount Helena. And they would be watching my heartbeat by telemetry on the back or at the laboratory. So that's kind of when you think about it, it was backpack size to begin, and now it's the size of a pack of cigarettes, I think, isn't it?
Smaller.
Or smaller.
It's like a flash drive. It's the size of a flash drive. It is a flash drive.
Is that right?
Yeah.
As you alluded in the first part of your lecture, Liz, Jeff Holter was an idea man. He had a lot of projects going on simultaneously, one of which was seismographs. He was very interested in earthquakes in Helena, of course, as an active earthquake area. And in his garage, which he didn't use to park vehicles, he had a seismograph. It was one of 3 seismographs in the Helena area, because I had to have 3 to triangulate where the earthquake was. So that was another one of his interests too. And then Bill Glasscock, who I knew well when I was working down there, was the first person to have a Volkswagen Beetle in Helena.
That fits.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with anything, but it was a strange looking vehicle at the time. So
Great.
that's all I had.
I somehow remember, this may be a false memory, talking with Gene Baucus about an explosion in the garage. Does that ring any bells with you? No, okay. Look somewhere else for that. Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Oh,
Matt.
over here.
Are the current monitors still manufactured by the same company?
No, lots of different I know Moderna. Some of you might have had Holter monitors, and they have different manufacturer names on it. So I don't know how the patenting works on that. I'm sure ultimately it has to go on to other.
Do you have an idea
companies.
of how many of these have been in use?
Oh, millions. That's a good thing. I could Google that. Yeah. I'm sure many of you had a Holter monitor. So that's very prevalent.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Dr. Gundersen, did you get a sense of how long the first versions that were put into practice would record? As I recall, they were at best about a 24-hour recording. I was just wondering if there was a lot
You know,
shorter
they talk
interval with the
about
first one.
10 hours and 10 minutes, so I have the feeling that was their goal initially, to be able to record 10 hours, which would be an awake period or a sleep period, I suppose. Now they can go on for days, of course, but no, I don't know that exactly, just that one thing that they say about the 10-hour limit.
I happened to read the Wikipedia article today, and it mentioned that the earliest versions weighed 30 pounds for a portable.
That was Rich was dealing with. Yeah, the miniaturization, you know, I'm in a writing class with a student, and I was talking about my dad's slide rule, and I said, you know, the first astronaut, when they had that problem with this Apollo 13, or them that went up and had the accident, they whipped out their slide rules. And this young lady said, well, why didn't they just use a calculator? And so I wrote a whole story about that. People don't realize, and we don't, you know, we don't have any good realization of how fast things are going either, I don't think. It's just awfully fast.
Any other questions? We have more? Great.
Not a question so much as a
Comment, maybe.
Comments are good.
That's good, too.
I worked in a large cardiology practice for a number of years, and in the 80s, they were still a pretty good size, and they were a challenge because they were reel-to-reel tape.
Were they still then?
And you reused the tape, so you would have to erase it with a magnet, and after a few uses, the tape would break, so you'd be splicing the tape. And we had to run it off on this enormous machine. It was actually called the Eliminator. We were like, don't let the patient see
great.
the name of this thing. And it came out on a silver type light activated printout, and it'd come out very quick. And you had to roll it up rapidly so that the light didn't get it, because too much exposure and it would disappear completely.
Sure.
And then you would have to go through that 24 hours, figure out what was important, blow it up, make a copy it on the copy machine before the paper could fade.
Wow.
And so I was in that practice for 22 years.
Wow.
And so by the time I left, they were the nice digital ones.
Yeah.
And they came out on real paper.
Yeah.
It's way too easy.
Yeah, that's interesting. What years were those, and it was doing the silver?
I started there in 89. I started there in 1989, and then I left in 2011. when
So
I
it
came
took
here.
them forever to get onto the, well, computers came around in the 80s for this kind of handy thing, so that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it looks like no more questions. If I can keep you for 2 more minutes, I just have a few announcements to entice you to future talks. If you're thinking ahead towards St. Patty's Day, we have 2 weeks from today, same time, same place, the Irish in Montana. We're having a presentation by Lauren Hunley. She's the community historian in Billings, and so that should be a really fun talk to get you in the mood for St. Patty's Day. And then 2 weeks after that, we will have a really interesting presentation by Mary Jane Bradbury. She's kind of our living history person at the Historical Society, and she will do A Mother's Journey, the life of Lucy Meriwether Lewis Marks, who was Meriwether Lewis's mother. So, and she will do that as Lucy Meriwether Lewis. So that should be really interesting too. And one more thing, next Wednesday at the Capitol, in the Capitol Rotunda, we'll be having our gallery of outstanding Montanans induction ceremony, and Governor Gianforte will be there to induct Dolly Smith Cusker Akers. She was Montana's first American Indian legislator. And we'll also induct novelist and historian Ivan Doig into the Hall of Outstanding Montanans, which is quite an honor. So that is next Wednesday at noon. If you have time to attend that, that will be a really nice ceremony too.
Okay.
So
Now, go ahead and take a button. I didn't make too many because I'm just not sure that many people are going to want one. But there are some about, and I'm somebody who is on, I'm not on Twitter, and I'm never going to go on Twitter because I have a feeling it's one of those things that once you get on, maybe you can get off, you know. So if somebody is on Twitter and can do the Justice for Glasscock, let me know if it comes up with anything. That would be great. And I have some of the pictures, those wonderful pictures that the Historical Society has. And you can look at Glasscock's artwork, and he's such a scientist, he put the programming on the back of it. He made it. It's great. So thanks very much for coming.
thanks, everybody.